Would you believe me if I told you that the 2026 World Cup is going to be unlike anything we've ever seen before? 3 host nations, 48 teams battling it out, and the final tournament for some of the greatest players in football history. But that's just scratching the surface of why this World Cup is going to be absolutely legendary. From Messi and Ronaldo's potential farewell, from the United States hosting their first World Cup in over 3 decades, to brand new nations competing for glory, this tournament is shaping up to be the most dramatic, controversial, and unpredictable World Cup in the history of the beautiful game. So, buckle up, because this is the entire story of why the 2026 World Cup is going to be a revolution that changes football history forever. Now, to understand why this World Cup is going to be a first in history, we need to start back in 2014 Brazil, because that's when FIFA made a decision that would change the football world forever, expanding the World Cup from 32 teams to 48 teams. This doesn't just mean more teams. This means more matches, more drama, more shocks, and more history being written. And this expansion is opening the doors to countries that have never appeared in a World Cup before. Canada, even though they said goodbye in the group stages in 2022, automatically qualifies as a host. Mexico, as CONCACAF's powerhouse, will be there as always. But here's what's most striking. We're going to see more teams from Africa and Asia. And this opens the door wide for a Leicester City-style Cinderella story. But 48 teams is only half the story, because this World Cup is also being hosted by 3 countries together for the first time in history: the United States, Canada, and Mexico. For the first time in 94 years, the World Cup final is returning to North America. And this isn't just a football tournament, this is literally a festival across an entire continent. Now, for the United States, this is special, because in 1994, the United States last hosted a World Cup. And that tournament saw some of the most iconic moments in football history. Roberto Baggio's penalty miss, Romario and Bebeto carrying Brazil to the championship, and fans packing the stadiums. 32 years later, America is once again hosting the world's biggest stage. But this time, they're not just going to be hosts, they could be genuine championship contenders. Because the US national team has undergone an incredible transformation in the last few years, with names like Christian Pulisic, Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, Gio Reyna, and young star Ricardo Pepi, this team isn't just coming for participation certificates anymore. They're coming to win. And with home advantage, who knows? Maybe they can do what England couldn't, lift a World Cup at home. But America isn't the only host country. Canada is experiencing its own football revolution. Alphonso Davies is Bayern Munich's star, Jonathan David is banging in goals at Lille, and Cyle Larin is constantly rattling the nets for the national team. In 2022, Qatar-Canada appeared in a World Cup for the first time in 36 years, and even though they were eliminated in the group stages, they're building something for the future. In 2026, as hosts, Canada could be a surprise package. And then there's Mexico. El Tri, CONCACAF's giant, always the team that disappoints at the World Cup. They've been eliminated in the round of 16 in the last 8 World Cups. Always the same spot. It's almost like a curse, but in 2026, with home advantage, can Mexico finally break this curse? With Hirving Lozano, Raul Jimenez, and young talent Santiago Jimenez, Mexico could write history. Or they could say goodbye in the round of 16 once again. Time will tell. Now, let's move from the host countries to the favorites, because this World Cup is going to be the last chance for some heavy hitters. Let's start with Brazil, the Seleção, 5-time world champions. But here's the problem. Brazil hasn't won a World Cup since 2002. 24 years. For a generation with Neymar, Vinicius Jr., Rodrigo, and Richarlison, this is unacceptable. In 2022 Qatar, Brazil entered the tournament as favorites, but they were eliminated by Croatia on penalties in the quarterfinals. Neymar cried, Brazil cried, and the world wondered if Brazil's golden age had come to an end. But here's the thing, 2026 could be Brazil's last chance. And if Brazil can't win this World Cup, this generation will be remembered as failures. The pressure is enormous. The expectations are even bigger, and Brazil's history has shown us that they can collapse under pressure. Remember 7-1? Yeah, that trauma is still there. But if there's one team under even more pressure than Brazil, it's Argentina. Because Lionel Messi ended football's greatest debate in 2022. He won the World Cup, he surpassed Cristiano Ronaldo, and he crowned himself the greatest of all time. But here's the question, will Messi play in 2026? Messi will be 39 years old during the tournament. He's no longer at Paris Saint-Germain, he's playing for Inter Miami. MLS is not the Champions League, but Messi is still putting on a show, still providing assists, still scoring goals, and still being Messi. And if he decides to play, Argentina has a real chance of defending the championship. But here's a complication. Argentina's squad is aging. Ángel Di Maria has retired. Nicolas Otamendi will be 40 years old, and the young generation hasn't proven itself yet. Enzo Fernandez, Alexis McAllister, and Julian Alvarez are talented, but they're not Messi. If Messi doesn't play, is Argentina still a favorite? That's the biggest question waiting to be answered. And then there's Cristiano Ronaldo, CR7, five-time Ballon d'Or winner, a man who has scored over 650 goals, but he'll be 41 years old during the tournament. He's no longer at Manchester United, Real Madrid, or Juventus. He's playing for Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia, away from the European stage. But Ronaldo still has hunger. He still wants a World Cup. And if Portugal calls him, he'll go. But here's the harsh truth. Ronaldo missed a goal against Morocco in 2022. He left the pitch in tears, and everyone thought his World Cup dream had died. If he's going to play in 2026, this is his last chance. But let's be realistic. At 41 years old, is Ronaldo still world class? Should Portugal put him on the pitch, or should they trust young stars like Bruno Fernandes, Rafael Leão, and Bernardo Silva? This debate will be settled by the tournament. Now let's move from the favorites to the dark horses. Because every World Cup has a Croatia, a Morocco, or a South Korea. Who's it going to be in 2026? Let's start with England, the Three Lions, the team that hasn't won a World Cup in 60 years. In 2022, they were eliminated by France in the quarterfinals. Harry Kane missed a penalty and England once again went home crying. But this team is still young. Jude Bellingham is becoming a star at Real Madrid. Phil Foden is Manchester City's engine. Bukayo Saka is carrying Arsenal, and Harry Kane is still scoring his goals, now for Bayern Munich. England's problem is mentality. They always collapse in big matches. Penalties? Forget it. Extra time? Disaster. But if Gareth Southgate or a new manager can prepare them mentally, England can finally break the curse. Then there's France, the defending champions, the 2018 winners, the 2022 finalists. Kylian Mbappé is currently the best player in the world. He scored a final hat-trick in 2022 and still lost. But he'll only be 27 years old in 2026, in his prime. And France's squad is deep. Eduardo Camavinga, Aurelien Tchouameni, Randall Kolo Muani, William Saliba. This is a talent factory. If one team can win back-to-back World Cups, it's France. But here's a problem. Injuries. In 2022, France lost Paul Pogba, N'Golo Kanté, and Karim Benzema. If something similar happens in 2026, their dreams could be shattered. And then the dark horse, the Netherlands. Oranje. They did really well until the quarterfinals in 2022. But then they went to war with Argentina. Literally. 18 cards. Fights. Chaos. And they lost on penalties. But the Netherlands is still dangerous. Virgil van Dijk is leading the defense. Frankie de Jong is conducting the orchestra in midfield. And Cody Gakpo and Memphis Depay are scoring the goals. If everything comes together, the Netherlands can pull off a surprise. But now we're getting to the really crazy part. Because with 48 teams, there are going to be some absolute surprises. New countries, new stories, new heroes. Let's talk about Asia. Qatar was the host in 2022, but they were a disgrace. 3 matches, 3 defeats, and they became the laughingstock of the football world. But 2026 will be different. Japan, South Korea, Australia, and maybe Iran will participate. And don't forget, Japan beat both Germany and Spain in 2022. They're not a force to be ignored. From Africa, the continent that always breaks our hearts, we'll see more teams. Morocco reached the semifinals in 2022 as the first African country. Hakim Ziyech, Achraf Hakimi, and Yassine Bonu carried them. If that team comes together again, they can do great things again. But don't forget Senegal, Nigeria, Egypt, and Ivory Coast are coming too. Can Africa finally win a World Cup? 2026 gives them that chance. And then there's CONCACAF. Outside of the United States, Mexico, and Canada, countries like Costa Rica and Jamaica could participate. Remember when Costa Rica reached the quarterfinals in 2014? They beat Italy, England, and Uruguay in their group. Small countries can dream big. Now let's get to the biggest question. Why is this World Cup going to be crazy? First, the format. 48 teams, 16 groups, 96 group matches. This isn't just more football. This means more chaos. More Saudi Arabia-Argentina-style shocks. More last-minute goals. More drama. Second, the hosts. 3 countries, 16 cities, 16 different stadiums. Players will deal with jet lag. Fans will travel intercontinentally. This is a logistical nightmare, but a paradise for supporters. Third, the legends farewell. Messi, Ronaldo, Neymar, Modric, Thiago Silva. These legends are maybe taking the stage for the last time. And when a football legend prepares to say goodbye, magic happens. Fourth, new stars. Jude Bellingham, Kylian Mbappe, Pedri, Gavi, Vinicius Jr. These players are going to use this tournament to claim it as their own. Watching a star being born? That's unforgettable. Fifth, technology. VAR is now part of football, but it still causes controversies. Remember in 2022 in the Japan-Spain match, whether the ball crossed the line? Or the 18 cards in Argentina-Netherlands? 2026 will bring more. The 2026 World Cup hasn't started yet, but it's already the most talked about tournament. And one thing is certain, this is going to be unforgettable. Now, if you enjoyed this video and want more, hit that subscribe button. Because as the World Cup approaches, we're going to cover every team, every player, and every drama. And I promise we'll bring you the best football content. But for now, tell me, who do you think is going to win 2026? Write it in the comments. Brazil, France, Argentina, or a complete surprise team? Whatever happens, one thing is certain. The 2026 World Cup is going to be the craziest in history, and we're all going to be here for it.